Right now, the United States and China are deliberately pulling their economies apart. From heavy tariffs to strict export bans on advanced microchips, the prevailing logic in Washington and Beijing is total strategic competition. Listen to the political rhetoric from either side, and you think the world's two largest economies are racing to cut every remaining tie they have. But buried underneath the headlines of a trade war is a surprisingly durable agreement. From 2026 to 2028, China is locked in to purchase a guaranteed minimum of $17 billion in American agricultural exports every single year. We're talking about a massive, heavily structured pipeline of soybeans, corn, wheat, beef, and poultry flowing straight across the Pacific. In an era where competing industries are facing embargoes and decoupling, agriculture gets a pass. To understand why these hostile rivals are forced into a multi-year economic marriage, we have to look at the math of feeding 1 billion people. China faces a unique, defining demographic challenge. It has to maintain total food security for a population of over 1.4 billion people. As the country's middle class has expanded over the last few decades, their diet has shifted. Consumers are demanding significantly more high-quality protein, particularly beef and poultry, than previous generations. But looking at this map of China's agricultural capacity, you can immediately spot the bottleneck. The country suffers from a severe spatial imbalance. The vast majority of its population lives far away from its very limited, weather-dependent zones of arable land. And when you increase meat production, the agricultural math scales up quickly. Raising a single cow or chicken requires huge inputs of soybean meal and corn feed, crops that Chinese domestic farms simply do not have the acreage to grow in sufficient volumes. Importing those specific calories from abroad isn't an ideological preference for Beijing. It is an absolute structural requirement to keep food supply stable and maintain domestic order across the country. Across the Pacific, the United States has the exact opposite geography. The American Midwest consistently produces a staggering surplus of staple crops. While high yields sound like a success story, overproduction creates a deep economic vulnerability. Without massive, reliable international buyers, U.S. farmers are exposed to volatile global price swings that can devastate rural communities. That is precisely what this $17 billion agreement solves. It provides guaranteed industrial-scale demand, establishing a firm price floor that directly sustains the economies of states like Iowa, Illinois, and Nebraska. Of all these commodities, soybeans do the most heavy lifting. They are the single largest agricultural export, keeping this bilateral trade relationship intact. The result is a highly practical, locked-in fit. China needs the volume to feed its livestock, and the U.S. needs the cash to support its agricultural sector. Neither nation can truly replace the other at this massive scale without inflicting severe economic pain on themselves. Because these two economies are so massive, their private bilateral pipeline dictates the rules for the rest of the world's food supply chain. When a buyer the size of China locks in a multi-year purchase of this magnitude, it stabilizes global commodity prices. Markets for staple crops become highly predictable because the largest buyer has already secured its supply. But that predictability creates fierce competitive pressure elsewhere. Heavyweight agricultural exporters like Brazil and Argentina suddenly find themselves squeezed, knowing a large fraction of Chinese demand is contractually walled off by the Americans. Global commodity traders and transport networks have to physically adapt. They are actively readjusting their long-term contracts and rerouting ocean freight simply to accommodate this giant pipeline between the U.S. and China. This deal exerts a gravitational pull so strong that every competing agricultural nation has to adjust their own export strategies in response. Yet, for all its billions guaranteed on paper, the entire arrangement relies on variables that neither government can easily control. The most immediate physical threat to this supply chain is the weather. An unexpected drought or a severe flood in the American Midwest could quickly decimate harvest yields, leaving the U.S. unable to deliver the contracted tonnage. Then there are the political risks. Sudden shifts in leadership, renewed tariff wars, or sharp currency fluctuations require constant monitoring and endless renegotiation to keep the grain moving. Technology, AI, and advanced manufacturing will absolutely remain the battlegrounds of the 21st century. But beneath those disputes, the basic biology of human consumption and the rigid geography of farming force the world's two biggest rivals to remain deeply dependent on each other.